That was the moment that created the meme that will really haunt Margaret Brennan's career from this point forward, or what's left of it. Margaret Brennan recently became the anchor of Face the Nation, that's CBS News' Sunday show. Now, not only are Sunday shows becoming more and more irrelevant because they're sort of scripted Potemkin Village attempts to tell the American people what's going on in politics. You got to wait once a Sunday to see it. It's an hour long. You've got politicians on there. They never answer the questions directly. They just sort of dodge and pivot, and then they have a roundtable to discuss the interview they just had. And the roundtable is basically completely populated by left-wing Democrats who hate Trump, and usually just one Republican who also hates Trump. A perfect example over on ABC on This Week with George Snuffleupagus. Their Republican that they have to comment is Chris Christie. Chris Christie. Maybe sometimes they'll swap him out with Bill Kristol. You get what I'm saying. They're terrible shows. But Margaret Brennan, when she became the host of Face the Nation, this was her chance to build her career into something huge. Maybe she'll even be the anchor of CBS Evening News at some point. She was a rising star. But then Trump happened. The Trump campaign happened. And, well, she couldn't handle it. She's been reduced down to this withering little Trump-hating meme that does nothing but attempt to fact check the person that she's talking to if it's a Republican, and her fact checks are almost always wrong. You'll remember she tried to do this to JD Vance during the vice presidential debate, and she was humiliated. Well, she tried it again this Sunday. Take a look at this extraordinarily stupid moment.
Appropriator, I've asked them to be very clear about, for example, their role funding Hamas in Gaza. They would not comply. They will not tell us what they do. Now that we start to find out some of the programs that AID has been funding, if you think about it, sex change operations in Guatemala, LGBTQ programs in Serbia.
The U.S.
This is
government
ridiculous.
does not fund
so beyond
sex
the pale.
change operations or fund Hamas. You know that, though. But you sit on...
That is not true, Margaret. I couldn't get the Secretary of State. I asked him 3 times to tell me that we were not funding Hamas through AID. He couldn't do it. And frankly, what we found is that we've been funding as American taxpayers,
that the United States
organizations.
government is funding a terrorist group?
Certainly, the funds that have gone to UNRWA. You saw the UNRWA members who were also Hamas members doing an attack on.
UNRWA is part of the United Nations.
UNRWA is supporting terrorist groups. And if you look at what UNRWA has done, it's been so counter to our national interest. It's unbelievable that we would fund it.
Yeah, this is classic Margaret Brennan. In fact, let's go to the moment where she attempts to fact check Haggerty here, because it's one of the pet peeves that I hate the most about these stuck-up, arrogant, snot-nosed, DC-based political reporters and teleprompter readers. She's looking over her notes there as if she has notes to look over because she's a serious journalist. She's a teleprompter reader with a really good haircut and a nice makeup job. Take a listen to how she does this.
LGBTQ programs in Serbia.
The U.S. government does not fund
beyond the pale.
Change operations or fund Hamas. You know that, though.
That's it right there. That drives me insane. You know that, though. You already know that. You're smarter than this, Mr. Senator. You know that, Senator Haggerty, but you're just saying it because Trump made you say it. You're lying, and you know you're lying, but I'm going to call you out. So hold on a minute. The U.S. government doesn't fund Hamas. You heard Haggerty make the point. We fund UNRWA. And even the United Nations had to expel people from UNRWA because they caught them red-handed helping Hamas as part of the Hamas network. And by the way, under Joe Biden, we funded the government in Gaza. Who is the government in Gaza? Hamas is the government in Gaza. Trump cut off that funding. Biden reinstated that funding. We 100% have been funding them. And she was reduced to this ridiculous, and the look on the face as she's doing this fact. Oh, I'm so sick and tired of you people coming on my show and making Democrats look bad. How am I going to get invited to the next dinner party here in town if I don't push back on you? We can't allow our viewers to hear such a thing, that the U.S. government funds Hamas. 100%. By the way, we also fund Iran, who funded Hamas, and Hezbollah. And where is this fact-checking whenever she's got a Democrat on her show? Let's move on. because then she did another very, very serious interview. You can tell it's serious because she's wearing earth tones. And they wanted to make sure that the makeup looked very serious and despairing. This is an interview with someone they cloaked in anonymity. Very important to protect this person's identity, lest they be abused and in some way maligned. Who is the person that must be protected at all costs? Who is this very, very serious interview with this victim? A federal bureaucrat who works for USAID. The reason we're protecting her anonymity is so that she can get another job in the bureaucracy to screw with the Trump administration. Watch this nightmare referred to as journalism over on CBS News.
Why in our conversation do you think you need to remain anonymous?
It has been a very hard week. Personally, professionally, as I said, I live in Washington, D.C. Many of my colleagues work in this field. Starting from January 21st, so the first day of the new administration, things started to go sideways very quickly. The atmosphere of fear that was in the USAID building, which we're no longer in, the atmosphere of fear in terms of not knowing who was in the building, not knowing what their motivations were, not knowing if our emails or channels were safe, not knowing how to interpret these executive orders, right, around DEIA or administration priorities. All of that created an atmosphere of massive insecurity.
An atmosphere of fear and massive insecurity because people from the executive branch were actually overseeing what we were doing and actually holding us accountable for our actions and even our communications with people. We're so afraid we don't know how to interpret these executive orders. We're concerned that we might lose our job. Where have these people been since the pandemic when millions and millions and tens of millions of Americans had to live in an atmosphere of fear and intimidation and uncertainty because their jobs were ripped from them at a moment's notice? This is pathetic. And CBS News is buying into this and actually feeding into this atmosphere that this person is somehow a victim and can't possibly show their face around Washington, D.C. because of the intimidation. This guy, dude or madam, whatever, it sounds like Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. He rubs the lotion on its skin. Get a real job. That's my advice to you. I'm sorry, I hate to be unfeeling. Get a real job. Your entire agency had 14,000 people working in it. Marco Rubio is now in charge of it. He says he needs less than 300 to do the same job. You had an atmosphere of fear and intimidation because you were afraid that people were looking over your shoulder and you were going to get fired. Good. Everyone who works for the government should feel that way. Welcome to the real world. Every single person working in the American economy for a corporation or even a small business, we have that same fear. Because if you don't do a good job and you're not actually getting it done, you will be fired. Or because of heavy government regulations, boy, that's the ultimate person looking over your shoulder, isn't it? High taxation and government regulation, and it makes it impossible for you to work and perform in this environment, in this economy. You're done. Your business goes belly up because of the government and what they're forcing you to do. Because of you, because of the people that put you in power. This is pathetic. But Margaret Brennan, she treats this person like it's some sort of a victim from sexual assault or something. You know, someone who had to change their clothes in a locker room next to a biological man pretending to be a woman. Although Margaret Brennan would actually treat the biological man as the victim in that case. We'll watch the rest of it.
And so people have, I think, lost the ability to know what's true from what's not at this point. Everyone is really scared. And so, you know, I have a daughter. I have a family like most Americans, and I want to be brave. I think it's really important to share our personal stories at this time, but I am afraid, and I just don't want to put them at any more risk than I have to.
When you say doxed, there's fear of public sharing of your name and possibly targeting.
Absolutely.
By who?
Well, I mean, at this point, Doge members, including Elon Musk, have access to not just the data within the USAID world, right, and the USAID system, which includes my personal email address, my social security number, my entire security file. In that security file is every contact I've ever known, every country I've traveled to, every home address I've had. So no matter which way I look at it, my information is entirely compromised, and it's in hands that I don't know and don't trust. And yes, the government can be slow. It can be inefficient. It can cost taxpayers money. I do not doubt that at all. What is absolutely clear to me is that the methods being used to achieve this so-called efficiency, not only do they not seem to be vetted and approved by the President of the United States or our Secretary Marco Rubio, they're entirely the actions of a rogue few individuals. They're dangerous, they're illegal, they're cruel more than anything. And so, no, I don't think this is serving American interests or answering to the president's mandate. And so to have this sort of, to be vilified by a billionaire who has decided that he's unilaterally going to take help away from the poorest people in the world, and he's doing it on behalf of the American people, is particularly gross and horrifying. And I am angry, I am sad, I am devastated for my colleagues, for myself, for my family, and for the American people.
Honestly, I
Why?
don't want this person working for the federal government in any capacity if they're this big of a snowflake and they're this fragile and they're this terrified by something like this. And I'm sorry, don't you have to have a college education to have a job like this? I assume so, because, this is USAID. They're the elite of the elite. So the best word he can come up with, or she can come up with, is gross to describe what Elon Musk is doing. And by the way, where was Margaret Brennan's fact check? You know how she did to the senator just a moment ago when he said that Elon Musk and his team is doing this without the approval and consent of the president or the secretary of state? Wasn't that the moment when Margaret Brennan was supposed to say, actually, he does have the full support of the president and the secretary, but you already know that, right? Where was the smarmy, condescending kind of fact check there, Margaret? Margaret, that was your moment. By the way, I think I've already figured out who that person is and what they do. Clearly, that was one of the voices of the Muppets in the Iraqi Sesame Street, right? That's what that person does for USAID. Ooh, Miss Piggy. Oh, actually, I don't think they would have a Miss Piggy in the Iraqi Sesame Street, right? There's kind of a halal problem there. All right, I don't want to get into that. Let's get on to Margaret Brennan and her sad, tragic career. It may have all started or really spiraled into complete out of control oblivion on election night itself. Do you remember how she handled the news that she was going to have to spend the next 4 years covering President Trump?
Any country I have ever covered anywhere in the world, people vote on the 3 feet in front of them and the kitchen table they sit down at every day. And the economic issues are just so fundamental, and the experience of that. And, Nora, you said earlier, maybe we overfocused on grocery prices. I think, Donald Trump campaigns saying he's going to lower the price of bacon. The president of the United States has nothing to do with the price of bacon.
Or eggs, for that matter.
Or eggs, or any of it. But it's
or
promising.
gas.
I get you're uncomfortable, even though the head of the Federal Reserve and those guys, you don't quite know what they do back in Washington, but they're making your house more expensive because they're hiking up more, you don't get that. You don't get the national number where Joe Biden is telling you, look, inflation is moderating and coming down, but you understand your grocery cart or your gas tank. And that personal experience just seems to be what at least people are using to justify their vote.
How are you justifying your vote? Well, groceries are a lot more expensive. Don't you know what the Fed chairman is doing? I love the sadness and the anger and the frustration over you. Let's just be clear here. The anger is over you voting the way you voted and for the reasons that you voted. And she's still flummoxed by the whole thing. Margaret, if only you had like a weekly platform with a big budget and the ability to actually talk about politics and issues on a regular basis, that would really keep you from being upset. And oh wait, you do. You're the host of Face the Nation, so maybe you're part of the problem. Also, one other thing, the president doesn't have anything to do with the cost of eggs or groceries. I'll remember that if the prices don't come down, because I'm sure Margaret Brennan will be the first one to say, well, it's not Trump's fault. And secondly, actually, the president does, at least in the last 4 years he did, because he made the cost of energy so expensive from day one, shutting down the Keystone Pipeline, stopping all new leases for oil and gas exploration in this country. The second you allow gas prices to get more expensive and energy prices across the board to be more expensive, which is what Biden did by design on purpose because of his Green New scheme, well, that brings up the cost of everything, because manufacturing everything costs energy, and transporting those things once you've manufactured it costs energy, and then selling it at a store costs energy, and your ability to go and buy it costs energy. Energy drives the cost of everything. But you already knew that, didn't you, Margaret? Yes, you did. Let's let JD Vance have the last word here, because he's been the perfect foil for Margaret Brennan in this very sad time in her career. And of course, his interview last week became an instant classic meme.
Well, this is a country founded by immigrants.
Well, this is a country
This is a
founded
unique
by
country.
This is a very unique country, and it was founded by some immigrants and some settlers. But just because we were founded by immigrants doesn't mean that 240 years later that we have to have the dumbest immigration policy in the world. We know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember. So clearly not all of these foreign nationals
But there are
have been properly
30,000
vetted.
people in the pipeline, Afghan refugees.
But my primary
Do you stand by
concern
it?
as the vice president, Margaret, is to look after the American people. And now that
So
we
no.
know that we have vetting problems with a lot of these refugee programs, we absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
These people are
not
vetted.
good.
These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted. And many people in the media and the Democratic Party said that he was properly vetted. Clearly he wasn't. I don't want my children to share a neighborhood with people who are not properly vetted. And because I don't want it for my kids, I'm not going to force any other American citizens' kids to do that either.
No, and that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really
But-
care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country. And I think most Americans agree with me.
Yeah. And that was the moment. That was the moment that created the meme that will really haunt Margaret Brennan's career from this point forward, or what's left of it. It's hilarious and also kind of sad. In fact, Margaret Brennan, if you watch, go look at her account on X, the everything app, the social media platform, because every time she tweets anything out, even if it's just a clip from her show, or if it's news related, or even if it's something personal, you know, congratulating a colleague, she gets this in her replies. Just, it's sad and it's hilarious, because that was the moment. That was the moment. And you saw her engaging with JD Vance. This is, I guess she's decided is her new persona. This is what she has to do, is constantly engage in this sanctimonious, arrogant sort of debate with whoever she's asking. But it's more than that. It's that attitude. It's the attitude of, yeah, but you know, you saw the face that she made. It's kind of a special situation. You know, oh, but you already know that, don't you? And JD Vance has the perfect answer. I think the answer that we all want to give. I don't really care, Margaret. Go seek her out. You should see if anyone has said it yet on her latest tweet. And if not, you can be first. Have you seen the news from economists forecasting a depression, not a recession, a depression by the year 2030? See, we've got this perfect storm brewing. Congress is going to try to do something about it, but it's going to be hard. See, we got Social Security and Medicare hitting a breaking point. We got the largest generation hitting retirement. We got a smaller workforce, which means smaller tax funds funding those programs, and then a growing national debt, rising cost of living. We have a problem right now. So what are you going to do about it? Well, you can do something to protect your own family's future. Gold can be a safe haven in hard economic times. And Birch Gold, well, they make it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into actual physical gold. Birch Gold will help you transition an IRA, an existing IRA you've already got, or a 401k you've already got, into an IRA in physical gold. And it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. Protect your future today. Text Larry to 989898. My name, Larry, Larry, to 989898. Get your free info kit on gold, and you'll get a copy of The Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation, only information. Text My Name, Larry, to number 989898. Do it today.